على عباده الذين اصطفى ما بعد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. If you look at human beings, they are inherently social creatures. And so by nature of being human, what you see is that human beings seek out relationships. They seek out social interactions and interconnections that allow them to be connected with other individuals. And it's very quickly in the social sciences that people have recognized this phenomenon. And there are literally entire fields which are dedicated to the study of how this occurs and what are the dynamics involved therein. This sort of spans psychology, it spans sociology, it spans anthropology. And one of the dominant theories is that of what we call positive psychology. In relationships theory, the feeling or the thinking that individuals, and they often talk about dyads, a relationship between two people. It's sort of easier to analyze than some of these much more complex social networks. So if you start with the dyad, like a dyadian analysis, you see that there's this feeling or this thinking that relationships, however they may be, have the potential to be improved. This is thinking of positive psychology. If you understand what governs the dynamics within a relationship, then those particular dynamics can be addressed in counseling through interventions to improve the nature and the healthiness of that particular dyadian relationship. At least that's what people talk about, I guess, on paper. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, I shouldn't say unfortunate, maybe fortunate, let's say, to be in the position where I've been involved in various counseling scenarios. Because oftentimes when you talk about relationships, this is the one thing that overrides the thought of so many youth in this day and age, that who will be my potential spouse. And even when you get married, that's sometimes the most dominant relationship that you'll have is that between the husband and wife. And when that relationship goes bad, and when that relationship needs intervention, sometimes they seek out some type of arbitrator. And after seeing several cases, there's certain things that you notice that lead to an unhealthy relationship. And one of the things that really, I was just thinking about this before we just started talking today, was that one of the things that is really a telltale mark of an unhealthy relationship, or it leads to a very unhealthy relationship, is that generally one party is very selfish. They're all, they're just predominantly fixated about me. They don't really care or have a perspective of the other party who's involved. Am I getting what I want? Am I getting what I should be? Am I getting what I'm entitled for? And sometimes not even a sense of, there's almost this innate sense of entitlement that I should be getting what I want. Whether or not it's deserved or undeserved doesn't really matter. And that's sometimes very hard to broach, right, from the sort of standpoint of a counselor, because the focus of that counseling session is not to fix the marriage, right? It's get me what I want. The Quran is and so eventually over time you realize, and then you start to make disclaimers up front, that the Quran is so deep when you think about it. If they both want islah, meaning if they both want to salvage the relationship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put tawfiq between them. But there has to be this desire to salvage the relationship with both parties coming into that thing. If one person is not worried about the relationship, but they're worried about themselves, then you're fighting an uphill battle. right? You'll have counseling session after counseling session after counseling session, and it's the same thing over and over again because they're not worried about the relationship, they're worried about themselves. And so what I was just thinking about is how selfish we are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how many times do we even step back and say, what must Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala think about me? Or how have I dealt or treated Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All the time we're worried about me. I need to get my Jannah. I need to get my reward. I need to get my this, right? It's all about what can I get? What do I deserve? What is coming my way? Oh Allah, give me a good job. Oh Allah, give me this. Oh Allah, give me this. Someone has said it somewhat jocosely, but that dua is not Amazon.com. That just mangale and then just put it on the thing and it just comes. There's a certain adab that's associated with it. People think, this sort of fast food culture that, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just there to serve me. When He is ma'bud and we are the abid. He is the one who is worshipped and we are the servants. So that in itself really speaks to, and people are very quick to say, well, we'll talk about some of the telltale signs of an unhealthy relationship. But the first question is that, even before we talk about what's a healthy relationship or an unhealthy relationship is, do we have a relationship with Allah? Do you have a relationship with Allah? There's different models, and one of the models they talk about in relationship theory is what we call the Levinger model. And there's different stages in terms of a relationship, all of which end in termination, right, according to the particular model. Termination can either be you get dumped, right, or you get a divorce, or it could be that you die. So it's terminated. But the first step in that model is what they call acquaintance. Meaning that, from a Western perspective, is you get to know the other party. You look at certain variables, you look at certain qualities, you run it past your algorithm, and you sort of make the decision whether or not you want to become acquainted with this individual. So right now, at a certain point, there's no relationship. Right? What is a simple way to pass, to sort of, oftentimes people think about this in the sense of a romantic relationship. So there's boy sees girl, right? Usually starts with seeing, and then he becomes interested because maybe on the basis of beauty, right? He becomes interested in her, and then he wants to sort of get her number. So there's an initial sort of decision that's being made to whether or not I need to take someone with whom I have no relationship with, and maybe I should forge or maybe not forge a relationship. That's the initial decision branch point. In a very similar manner, if you first ask yourself the question, is that, do I have a relationship with Allah? But alhamdulillah, by the fact we say La ilaha illallah, there is a relationship already, alhamdulillah. And so the real question is what the quality of that relationship is. But in a very more intimate or more emotional sense, a person really should ask themselves, do I have a relationship? And the second thing is that you run things past this algorithm of whether or not you want to become quote-unquote acquainted. When people make this decision, it's generally based on 4 or 5 criteria. It's based on Jamal, it is based on Kamal, it is based on Nawal, and these general characteristics sort of guide a person when they make this decision. So people are innately, inherently attracted to things which are beautiful. People are innately or inherently attracted to things which are perfect. So much so, if a person is so perfect or so superlative in even throwing a rubber ball into a round hoop, right? People are willing to pay large amounts of money just to watch them, right? They'll hang their posters on the wall. They sort of give a part of themselves to that person. Just why? Because they have one kamal in a somewhat inconsequential aspect of life, right? They're good at basketball. They're good at football, right? The person dunks really nicely. That one small thing is enough to win a person's heart over. Right? That's the way humans operate. So they become more than intimately acquainted with such individuals. And also nawat, that when a person gives you something, that creates a certain type of bond between an individual and the person who's giving and the person who receives. If you look at any of the creation and run them around along this algorithm, every single person, every single being that exists in creation will fall deficient. Because no one is beautiful to the ultimate degree, and no one is perfect to the ultimate degree, and no one gives to the ultimate degree. There is only one being in existence that passes all the different parameters of the algorithm with flying colors. And that's Allah. There's no one who is more beautiful than Allah. There's no one who gives more than Allah. And there's no one who is more perfect than Allah. So on the basis of this alone, a person should make a very quick decision, right, that I need to become acquainted. If a person falters on this initial step of acquaintance, then they really mess up. You really mess up, because you can't move to making any of the further steps of a relationship. And understand that if you miss Allah, then you miss everything. And you said, who would actually make that decision? But many of us do, right? Because we put our careers before Allah. And we put our jobs before Allah. And we put our entertainment before Allah. And we put our things that we quote-unquote enjoy in life before Allah. And we put our friends before Allah. And we put our family before Allah. And we put our children before Allah. And a person can say, well, no, from an intellectual perspective, I don't, but look in your life, where you spend your time, what are the decisions that you make, what do you dream of, right? How many people actually sit and they dream of, oh, I wish I had a beautiful relationship with Allah, and that I had really close, I wish I was praying as if I was talking to Allah. People don't even have those jazbat anymore. Right? How many people are there that after every salah, no mother forgets to make dua for her child, right? But how many people actually sit after every salah that, Ya Allah, give me a connection with you that is real and abiding? So this decision, this initial decision that who do I want to make the primary relationship of my life, is a very important decision. It's been said in the Arabic language to the effect that لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ إِنْ فَاتَكَ عِوَضٌ وَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ إِنْ فَاتَكَ مِنْ عِوَضٍ, to that effect, that if for everything, that if you miss it, there is some type of replacement. But if you miss Allah, there's no replacement for Allah. So the first step of building a relationship, right, that was the topic of the weekend, is making this very sincere decision to themselves. A person makes a very sincere decision to themselves that this is an actual goal in my life. This is an actual, bona fide, real, viable, important goal in my life, in the same way that sending my kids to college is a goal, and saving for retirement is a goal, and paying for my bills is a goal, and having X, Y, and Z car is a goal, and getting married is a goal, and getting into med school is a goal. It's the same way that each one of these things are a goal, this is also a goal, and this is my primary goal. That is the starting point. That is the point of departure. Then, according to the Levinger model, the second stage is what we call build-up. So what happens is, guy and girl, they exchange numbers, right? And then he calls her. And then they go out for a date. And then they're seeing each other. And eventually they start to know more about each other, and they start to develop deeper and deeper feelings. So you're going from someone you had absolutely no idea who they were just some person on the street, and you start to actually develop some type of emotional attachment to this individual. In the same way, once a person makes this initial decision that I make my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to have an emotional attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then a person undergoes this stage of what we call build-up, where certain emotions start to arise within an individual. A person starts to think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they never thought about Him before. And they start to have this fineness of feeling that was absent before. And as you begin to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not a one-sided thing. If you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also loves you. If you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you and remembers you in a gathering better than that. In the same way, if you develop some fineness of feeling with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala values that tremendously. And He also replies in kind and also showers His love upon the individual. And that's the beautiful thing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll talk, perhaps it will come inadvertently later, but if it doesn't, I just want to mention in passing that, in these failing relationships, right, when one party is very selfish, one party is very self-centered, that's a doomed relationship, basically, right? Except there's one exception to that. That's a failed relationship. It's going to be terminated. It's going to end up in a divorce. It's going to be ugly, except in one case. And that one case is one person in that relationship decides, for no reason other than the goodness of their heart. And usually it's not only necessarily the goodness of their heart, you generally motivate such an individual by, inshallah, if you say do sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you a Jannah, and you connect them to the deen, that they say, you know what, I'll put up with it for the sake of Allah. Right? So then, that relationship was going to fail. And so you have a husband who completely neglects his wife, he's never fulfills any of her rights, he's completely abusive, he shouts at her, he swears at her, he hits her, and none of that is condoned. But for whatever reason, out of the goodness of their heart, maybe she says, my husband will change. Right? And in a very sad case, where, like everyone's just like, you should leave this person. And this person says, who knows, maybe his heart will change. She's just doing sabr. Right? I mean, everyone around her says, this is ridiculous, right? You're a complete victim in this relationship. But she's like, who knows, maybe won't I get sawab for this, right? And she's just sticking in there. So sometimes, even though on one side it's very lopsided, right, it's very unfair, and everyone says that you should just cut it off, one person will make such a sacrifice in that relationship, that it still is maintained. In the relationship of almost every mu'min with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that party that's making the sacrifice is Allah. That we are literally abusive in this relationship. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for no good reason other than that He is Halim, other than that He is Rahim, other than that He is Ghafoor, other than that He is Wadud, other than that He is Al-Ahad As-Samad, other than that He is Allah, He just maintains the relationship. The first time a person disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would have been rightful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take that individual and throw him and cast him outside the deen. The first time a person was to misuse their eyes, it would have been rightful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take those eyes back. The first time a person touched something that they should not have touched, it would have been rightful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take that person's hands away. The first time that a person stepped towards some place where they should not have gone, it would have been rightful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take that person's legs away. But with the very hands that a person disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts rizq in those hands. And with the very hands that a person looks at those things that they were not supposed to look at, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to look at the Holy Quran. Right? The very eyes that had looked and been misplaced, He calls them to the Kaaba so that they can look at the Kaaba and earn sawab for just looking at the Kaaba in 20 barakat. This is just the tremendous and magnificent majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's just Allah. But so getting back to what we were talking about earlier is that this build-up stage, that it's reciprocal. That if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love you. However, there are certain things that an individual can do that will increase the love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for that individual. And one of those things that a person can do is that they increase their iman. The more iman that you have in your life, the more love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will shower upon you. Now a person says, well, I have iman, right? I have complete iman. What are you talking about? But understand that iman has so many branches. And if you get into each one branch, you feel that I could dedicate a year to perfect this branch. Al-haya'u shu'batun min al-iman. That haya is also a shu'ba of iman. Who can claim that they have kamil haya? So many different, some of the branches of iman are associated with aqidah, some of the branches of iman are associated with amal, Some of Amalul Allah, some of the branches of Iman are associated with Amalul Qulub, matters of the heart. But all of these different branches are there. And I'll tell you, let me just put it in a simple perspective without getting so technical about it. A person says that they have Iman. If you really have, has been said beautifully that if Jannah is real, then how can we rest? If you really believe in Jannah, what are you doing sleeping? If Jahannam is real, how can we disobey Allah? Right? We say that we have Iman, right? You can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? So the more this Iman becomes true, the more it becomes pure, the more love this draws in from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a person's life. So, and it's during this phase of build-up, right? Build-up, that many Muslims get stuck. Because sometimes a lot of people actually get stuck in the first phase, that they never make that real fervent decision that I want to have a very real relationship with Allah. So that's the acquaintance stage. But many others sometimes at one point in life, whether a person is leading a godly life or a sinful life, almost every Muslim at one point in their life, there's that one day that they said, I want to be good. I want to be pious. You look back in your life, you will remember some days, there was some jazba inside us that said that, I really want to just pray 5 times a day and really just do good things. And then so sometimes you get to the build-up stage, and then sometimes people fail in this stage. If a person is able to surpass this build-up stage, right, and able to make that commitment, just resolve, develop some level of emotional attachment, then you enter into what Levinger calls the the continuation stage. In continuation stages, I don't know how we describe it. In Western society, you could say that it's sort of like going steady, right? You're going steady with the other guy. So it becomes that you develop a certain level of stability in your relationship. And it's generally we say stable period, but within this quote-unquote realm of stability, there's still continued growth. So a person, people have been, many of the people who are listening here are already married. You understand that there's a honeymoon phase, right? The honeymoon phase, for some people it lasts 1 month, some people it lasts 2 months, sometimes it lasts 3 months. Then after you get through your honeymoon phase, then real marriage starts, right? Right? Then there's the fights, then there's the negotiation. Your wife is going to sleep angry, the husband is going to sleep angry. She's getting mad at you for leaving the toothpaste on. You're getting mad at her for something completely insignificant. And it's just each person is at each other's throat, right? And then after 4, 5, 6, generally around 6 years, people develop sometimes enough maturity, right? So weather the storm, where they become somewhat stable in their relationship. And especially particularly if it was a healthy relationship, then they form a very sort of deep bond with their partner. And that's not as a bond which is not based on looks, it's not based on some of these frivolous things that that sort of characterize the honeymoon period. It's much deeper than that. So even if your spouse gains weight, you still love them just as much, right? And even if your spouse sometimes says something that you don't like, it's much easier to give them a hug at the end of the day. It's just, you have a much more mature and much more deeper relationship. You're just sort of stable. And that, as time goes on, becomes more and more and more sometimes meaningful and more deep. In the same way, when a person has a relationship with Allah, as time progresses, there should be a certain amount of what we call continuation. And this is really the stage that a Muslim should desire that he spends his entire life in. From the point that a person has made that decision to the point that they die, that they're in continuation. That you're trying to work on and improve this relationship, that you're stable. The fact that you have a relationship, the fact that you're focused on a relationship, the fact that in a sense that you're quote-unquote married to this concept of a relationship with Allah, that's a given now. Right? There's no question of divorce, there's no question of something else, there's no question of a second wife, right? There's no question of that this is the person that you're dedicated to, this is the number one priority in your life, and now how do you make it more meaningful? And that's really the journey of a lifetime. Unfortunately, sometimes when you get into relationships, there's a fourth and fifth stage. And the fourth stage is what they call deterioration. And not all relationships undergo this, but generally there are going to be some relationships which undergo a period of deterioration. And the very sad thing is there are people who actually make it to continuation. And they make it to that stage, and for whatever reason, something happens, shaitan gets to them, nafs gets to them, they get distracted in life, and they start to deteriorate. And you will see people who in their youth, they were so pious, they were so this, and now they're living a completely different life. Completely different life. And they look back and they're like, I don't know what happened. And sometimes they don't even look back. That's the sad thing. So if all of life you're trying to stay within quote-unquote continuation, then all of life you're also trying to avoid deterioration. If you follow deterioration to its ultimate conclusion, then it leads to what we call termination. This is something which is a little bit distinct from human relationships, because all of them eventually terminate. All human relationships terminate. Right? That's the reality, and that's the fourth reason that the ulama have talked about, is la zawal. Right? Nawal, jamal, kamal, and la zawal. But over here, all human relationships are bound to terminate. There's no way around it. However, for the relationship that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you form a real relationship, there is no termination. There is no termination stage. And that's one of the top reasons why you're in the initial acquaintance stage and making that initial decision, that this is the relationship to hang on to. Because if you pick this relationship, it never ends. For the lovers of Allah, death is not something that you are afraid of. It is just basically the thing that's standing between you and connecting yourself with your beloved. Right? It's something that you actually look forward to. Same way that people may go, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me a long life. There's other people who are, the friends of Allah who are waiting that, Ya Allah, when will be the day that I will stand before you? وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة. That no, they're just looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with them. And one of the mashayikh, he was saying that they were in a plane, and the plane started going down, and he was with his own teacher, and when the plane started going down, like everyone was in complete chaos, and they were so scared that the plane is going down, doing a crash. These people were in complete sukoon, because this is what you're waiting for, right? This is what you're waiting for. So that's a very beautiful aspect of having a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that whole first portion was to sort of establish sort of different levels of relationship. If a person feels that they already have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can also gauge, or you can assess whether or not you have a healthy relationship or you have an unhealthy relationship, right? And there's about 9 or 10 different points that you can sort of look at to determine that. So that would be a seminar in and of itself, right? That would be like a weekend course. We're going to talk about a few of these. If you have a healthy relationship, then one of the characteristics of a healthy relationship is that you look forward to meeting the other party. Right? There's a desire for some type of union. No matter how platonic, quote unquote, a relationship, you may think a relationship is, if it evolves, eventually the two parties want to be together. Right? Two friends who are far apart, they wait for the day that they can see each other. Some two people see each other after a long time. Right? One of the brothers, you saw your friend after such a long time. You should see how happy he was, right? The khushi that you have after seeing an old friend, and you just want to sit with them, and you want to talk, and you want to bring all the old memories back, right? Mother, her kid has gone to college. He comes back after 2 or 3 months. She wants to spend the whole night sitting and talking to her son, right? Because anytime you care about someone, you have a very important relationship, you want to spend time. Right? And you desire to meet them. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Person just has to take a step back and say that, how badly do I want to meet Allah? How much raja, how much shawq, how much passion do I have that, Ya Allah, I want to be with you, I want to talk to you, I want to be close to you. If that is not there, then that's one sign that a healthy relationship is lacking. Another sign of a healthy relationship is that each party is always thinking about the other party. Each party is thinking about the other party. So much so, right? They're always on their mind. They're sitting in biology class, she's thinking about Ahmed. He's sitting in chemistry class, he's thinking about Fatima. They're just, no matter where they are, they're at the party in Dawat, someone else's shadi, she's thinking, I always wonder how my shadi is going to be with Fatima. She's thinking, I wonder how my shadi is going to be with Ahmed. All the time they're just thinking about each other. They have no other thing that is as if the world stopped to exist. The only thing that exists in the world is Fatima and Ahmed. That's how when two people are really in love, nothing else makes sense. But sometimes you look at these people, they look like Majnoon. They're sitting, he's looking in her eyes, she's looking at his eyes. You're like, what are you guys doing? Right? It's like abnormal. That and they don't know. They don't care who's looking at them. They don't care what's going on. They're in their own world. Right? That is their world. He is her world, and she is his. That is a sign that that they are really deeply involved in this relationship. I'll tell you, there are people who are just as deeply involved in the relationship with Allah. You know how sometimes if you go to, particularly if you grew up in the city, you go into any bathroom stall, the bathroom stalls are never empty of signs, like 50 heart signs, right? And they're all carved out with keys and pencils and the backs of pencils whose erasers are completely gone, and then they scratch it into the bathroom stalls, right? That Kim and Tim and I don't know, everyone has. There's so many different things. They're all carved. You go in the park, you see that people carved in the wall. Literally, I know there's one individual. He had so much dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was so connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if you go and look in the margins of his undergraduate notes, you say Allah, 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 right? He couldn't help but just write it because there was so much mahabbah there. You just want to carve it. Person feels bored, they just sit and write Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. Person feels bored, they sit in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they feel that it's important to them. It's a natural progression. And this one brother, subhanAllah, he was really very beautiful brother. He used to live like a fakir, and when he was in undergrad, he would wait till after he finished undergrad, he would wait till he's done with work. Wait till he's done with work. And in the same way that, a boyfriend and girlfriend wait until class is over at 3 o'clock, the bell rings and they run to go and meet each other. The same way he would wait for the day to end, he would be done with his job, then he would go and drive to the masjid, and he would jump in the back of his car. Boys and girls do different things in the back of their car. This guy he didn't want to sit in the masjid because he didn't want anyone to see him. He would sit in the back of his car and he tried to do dhikr for 2 hours in a row. He would just sit in dhikr. That was his shok. Right? He couldn't help it. And then later on, he got married, he had children, and then he just thinks about those days that, those were the real days. Right? I didn't have any distractions. You just look back fondly at those memories. And just the way that sometimes a person looks back at the first days of their marriage and everything was so fun and the honeymoon was great. And the same way, that was their honeymoon period with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll mention one more, right, and then transition. Third sign is that if you have a relationship that you're very serious about, then you're very scared of breaking or losing that relationship. If a girl really likes a guy, she will watch him like a hawk to make sure that no other girl makes a move on him. Oh my God, right? If she senses, right, that anyone's making a move, you should see how fast she'll react and what type of plans she'll make to make sure that no one messes with her guy, right? Right? Not with my guy. Right? She'll make sure she wants to keep tabs on him, and sometimes it becomes very sort of claustrophobic because all the time someone's watching you, that where am I going, what's going on, come on, why are you so controlling, don't you trust me, this type of thing. No, I don't trust you. It's not that they don't necessarily trust you, but they just value that relationship so much they can't stand to see it jeopardized. In the same way that once a person develops some type of relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is healthy, a person should also be very scared of losing that relationship. They should be scared of doing anything that Khudan Khasta, if I do this one thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so halim, He always keeps this relationship alive. And you see this sometimes, people who are married know this, that sometimes, one party is very sabir, they generally don't get mad, but sometimes you'll say something, and then just blow up, right? You just touched the wrong chord. And you're like, man, I shouldn't have done that. A person should also be scared that I don't do anything that touches a chord with Allah. A person will speak a thing, very small on their tongue. They completely ignore it. They think that it's nothing, but it will throw them furlong into the hellfire. And I've seen that. I saw this one individual who was a high official in one of the university Muslim organizations. And this person was like, I spent hours in this person trying to bring him back into the deen of Islam. And you think, what does a person do to go from here to there? And one of the things that comes to him right now is maybe he had done something very slight. He himself had not even noticed it. Maybe he thought a single thought. Maybe he was some type of infidelity in the way that he thought about Allah. But it was enough that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala excluded him from the mercy of Allah. And he's out of the deen. He's out of the deen. His brother is going to do alim course, and this person is out of the deen. You just don't know. So a person should be very scared, and when a person is scared, then they adopt an attitude of taqwa in their life. There are also signs of an unhealthy relationship. And when I was going through this, I was like, Allahu Akbar, it's so scary, because each one of these was like, okay, that applies, that applies, that applies, that applies. An unhealthy relationship is one that sometimes one party requires the other party to always conform, what we call controlling. Right? Imagine how we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to conform to us. We don't want to conform to the deen. This is like the malady of like Western Muslims. Right? We're not satisfied with the deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. That I have completed my religion. I have perfected it. And this is the deen I want for you. And people say that it's not good enough for me. I want the deen to conform to me. 2 days, Eid can be this day or that day, that's inconvenient for me. Jummah, that's inconvenient for me. Zohar Salah is during work, that's inconvenient for me. For me to wear hijab, that's inconvenient for me. For me not to chat with X, Y, and Z and the other, that's inconvenient for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't really want that. Islam is not really that. And people are so quick to change the deen to make it conform to them rather than making themselves conform to the deen. Right? Serious problem. They talk about being psychotic. Right? That's a sign of an unhealthy. When one party is psychotic, that means it's unhealthy. And what's being psychotic is like you're being unpredictable. Right? How many times is our behavior completely unpredictable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You're praying 5 times a day for a certain week, and all of a sudden, Fajr is gone, Isha is gone, Zohar is gone, and you're like, I don't know what happened. Right? It's like literally sometimes Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. 1 week you grow out your beard, another week it's gone. 1 week you're like trying to wear a hijab, trying to like make a little bit of effort, trying to put on the jilbab thing. The next week, it's gone. Right? Completely like borderline, passive aggressive. One day you're here, when you're there, you're that. Unhealthy. Sometimes they say another sign of an unhealthy relationship, people are contradictory. Right? Contradictory. And it's very interesting when people are actually contradictory within a relationship. Oh honey, oh baby, I love you, right? I wouldn't want anyone else. And then he's going and looking at this person, and this, that, and the other. Right? That's not means. Is that how you show your love? In the same way, we also do this honey, honey, baby, baby with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Oh Allah, I love you. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're only Rabb for me. But then we go and worship the almighty dollar. Then you go and worship your boss. Then you go and worship your attending on the wards. Then you go and worship your nafs. People are ready to like serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You say one thing and then you do another. Right? You say one thing, it's completely contradictory. That is not a sign of a healthy relationship. And then there's another 4 or 5. We won't go into it. All right, let's transition to the next topic. Relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a real thing, and we talked about that a little bit this morning. I want to talk to it from a different aspect. And it's a little bit more technical, but it's important to know. There is something that we call it in the deen, what we call nisbah. Nisbah. Nisbah, easy way for people to think, it's not exactly what it is. It means like a link or a connection linguistically. But easy way to think about this is like it's a chain that connects you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Easy way for a person to develop some type of visual imagery, even though there is no real physical link in such a situation. But just to think about it, it's something that connects a person with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This nisbah existed within the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when the Sahaba came in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a state of Iman, it transferred into their heart. And they had this connection. They had a very real connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes the end game in developing a meaningful relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get this nisbah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bought. Right? How do I bring that nisbah, that connection that he had, that connection that he transferred into the lives of the Sahaba, the connection that existed in the pious predecessors, how can I bring that connection into my life? Right? How can I bring that connection into my life? And sometimes that's the whole thing. And there's a very long discussion about different types of nisbah. There's in'ikasi, there's qawliya, there's ifada, there's ittihadi, there's different types of nisbah. A very sort of detailed discussion, but suffice it to say that this nisbah actually exists, and you can acquire it. I was reading a book by what's that called? Hazrat Wala, Shaykh Omar Hussaini, and he says one thing very beautiful. The person basically asked the question, how do you know that you've achieved the nisbah? How do you know that you get the nisbah into your heart? Like you have this link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the answer he gave was not like from an ilmi perspective. It was such a beautiful answer, but it was dead on. He said, how do you know that when you become baligh? Right? How do you know when you become mature? In the same way, when you physically mature, something happens and you just know. Right? Life is not the same as it was before. Something changes. In the same way, when a person becomes spiritually mature, something very strange happens. Right? It literally becomes like you have a link with Allah. أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. That hal becomes ghalib on an individual. It is as if you're seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like it becomes like so real. It's just like you're living amongst people, but you're connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the same time. Meaning that you're 100% living amongst the people. But one person, Shaykh, he said it beautifully when he wrote to his teacher describing about his state in salah. He says that when I'm praying my salah, it is as if my heart is hanging from the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? I mean, and it's a real state that people experience. That you really feel that yourself connected with that realm in a very strange manner. And it's hard to describe these things in words, but they're things that literally do occur. They are realities to this. And if you look into our past, you see individual after individual who've strived for this nisbah, who've worked for this nisbah, and who've acquired this nisbah. And that's really the game. That how do we bring this connection, this link into our heart, that we have this very close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you see example after example of people who we would suppose have this nisbah. I mean, one story comes to mind. You may have heard of this. I won't say the whole story because it's very long. But there's this one woman who Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, had met. He was on the way to Hajj. He meets this lady. He doesn't meet the lady. He sees a lady who was sort of on the side, and she seemed that she was quite distraught and she was in despair. And so he goes up to her and he asks, is everything? He says, Assalamu alaikum. And she replies, Salam qawla min Rabbir Rahim. She replies also salam, but she quotes an ayah from the Quran. So he said, okay. And then he asked her, where are you from? And then she said, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawla. So from that he understood that she was actually from Jerusalem and she's going to Mecca. He said, okay. So then he said that, how long have you been staying? Have you been here? And she replied, ثلاث ليال سوية. Another ayah from the Quran. So he said, oh, you've been here for 3 days. And then so, any righteous person, the first thing that came to his mind, he said, is there any water here for wudu? So he's worried about her wudu. So she said that, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون ولا جنبا إلا عابري سبيل حتى تغتسلوا وإن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر أو جاء أحدكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا. So she recited the ayah of tayammum, so she understood that she didn't have any water with him. So then he asked her, he said, let me give you some food, and let me give you some water. And then she said, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, and complete your siyam until the night. So he understood that he was fasting in the month of, she was fasting. He said, it's not Ramadan, right? Ramadan was 2.5 months ago, you're going for Hajj, or maybe 2 months ago, or maybe 1 month ago, because in that time the journey should take much longer. So it's not Ramadan. So she said, what ayah did she quote? I have it here. وَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. That whoever makes nafil fast, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shakirun alim. So, but then he is also, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he was like not only the stalwart of the people of hadith, but he was the stalwart of the people of tasawwuf as well. So he was really ilmi shakhsiyat as well. So he said, but it's permissible to break the fast, right? So what did she say? It's after that. كان منكم مريضا على سفر من أيام يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر وإن تطوعوا خيرا فهو خير لكم. Right, that if you do tatawwu, is better for you. So he knew that she's not going to break the fast. So then he asked, what clan do you belong to? And she says, وَلَا تَخْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عَلْمٌ. Yeah, don't go after things that don't concern you. Right? Just leave it. What difference does it make to you what clan I'm from? It has nothing to do with you. So and then he said, oh, I'm really, really sorry. And then she said to him, as Yusuf alayhi salam had said to his brothers, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم. Don't worry about it. Right? There's no blame on you this day. And then he says, no, would you like, I can put you on my camel and we can go. And so she replied by saying, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Whatever you do from good, you'll find it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then she was getting onto the camel, because you have to mount the camel. Then she said, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze. So then he lowered his gaze. While she was getting onto the saddle, she got caught up. So then, and it was hard for her. So then she said, مَا أَصَابَكَ مِنْ سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِنْ نَفْسِكَ. Whatever reaches you from evil, then it's from your own self. So he understood that she was in some type of difficulty. So he helped her out. So then she said, فَفَهَمْنَاهَ سُلَيْمَانَ. So ayah of the Quran after ayah of the Quran. And then what happens after that? Then they start going towards the Kaaba, right? And they're going on that journey. Then he starts singing some traveling song. It was called the Huddi. And she said, وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ وَقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيَكَ وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ. Right? Another ayah from the Quran. That basically slow down, right? And you don't have to do this. And then she said, فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Read what is easy from you from the Quran. So then he recited the Quran, because that's at least a matter of sawab. And in this way she kept on reciting from the Quran, until they came to a place where she was catching up with the caravan. And he asked if she had a husband. She replied from the Quran. And when he came to her children, he said, what are your children? She said, you have children. She said, Al-malu wal-bunun wa zinatul hayati dunya. So he understood she had boys. He said, what are their names? So she said, وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. And then she said, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. And then she mentioned, I forgot what the third son's name was. So I have the Quran for each son, right? So then he went and he caught up with the caravan, and he said, you have your mother. And then she brought the children back. They were so happy because their mother had been lost. He reunited them. And then she said, فَبَعَثُوا أَحَدَكُمْ بِوَرَقِكُمْ هَذِهِ إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا فَلْيَأْتِكُمْ بِرِزْقٍ مِّنْهُ. That you go and one of them, from the sleepers in the cave, that go and bring some risk from the town to feed him. And kept on going like this. She's reciting from the Quran, until this person, he actually asked the lady, the children, that how long has your mother been speaking? And he had asked her at one point in this time, why do you speak like this? Why can't you speak like normal people? So she said, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ, that you don't speak a single word that except that is being documented. And he said, how long have you been speaking like this? How long has your mother been speaking like this? She said that we have known our mother to be speaking like this for 40 years. So imagine that on the day of Qiyamah, there will be individuals who their book of deeds will be opened. And on that day, there will be people whose books of deeds will be full of mis-salah. And their the book of deeds are full of prayers which were prayed in ghafla. And their book of deeds are filled with eyes being misused in the most unwanted ways. And their book of deeds are filled with every type of khiyana between human and interpersonal relationships. And when that book is just a commentary and a sad commentary on the life that we had left, when that book is a testament and an argument against us, there'll be other people who perhaps their book will be open and it will just be the Quran. And another portion of the story I had read elsewhere, that a person saw this person in a dream, this lady, and he said, "What came of you?" And she also replied him, "Hum wa azwajuhum ala al-ara'iki muttaki'un." Them and their wives are reclining on thrones. Right? She also provides in the Quran even in that state. And if you look at, and this is the state that once you develop this connection with Allah, these type of things are not hard to think about. There are people who read 15 juz a day. Right? There are people like Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. He said, who cares if they imprison us? Who cares if they imprison us? For us it is i'tikaf. Because once the heart is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your external conditions stop mattering. When you take Shaykh al-Hind, when he was put in, so people, the ulama, or one of the ulama, he documents when the British had exiled them into Malta, right, to Kalipani. And they talked about the difficulties that they faced on the way. That literally they were put in cages, and there were spikes coming in with the cages, and the journey was for 30 days, and they would hit on the brakes, and people would have literally been thrust into those spikes, and slowly like this for 30 days they would have exiled them into such and such place, and these people would never back down, and they were always standing up for the truth. Very touching, very intimate, and very poignant story about the sacrifices that our pious predecessors had made. But what they described, they said one of them says that the most difficult, he talks about some of the most difficult times. For example, at one point they had taken them off the train, and they had brought their families, right? They brought their wives, they brought their children. And they said, go and tell your parents just to see that they're with us to stop the uprising, and they will let them go home with you. All they have to say is a couple of words. The child is coming up to the Baba, Baba, they're saying you just have to say a couple of words, you can go home with us. Father's probably crying, child is probably crying. He says, "Bete, inshallah, I can't say this. I have to go." And he says, they would tell their wives, "Inshallah wa mulaqat hogi." They had no choice. Wife is crying, children are crying, and they're going on the path of the truth. That was the way they are. But if you look at their description, they said that while those times were really hard, right? Some of those times were really hard. For example, one of the daughters was getting married. She wrote a letter to her father, and he said that he wrote a letter back that it was really sad, the way that he wrote back to her, because he couldn't be there for her wedding. He was in prison. That this is the day that the daughter is being married, whose father is still alive but dead, or something to that effect. It was just really moving. But when they described them, they said that, but once we got to Malta and when we were imprisoned, our time was spent very well. Because when they had a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these things didn't really matter. And so the last thing that we'll sort of end with, right, that if a person says that you want a relationship with Allah, what is a practical thing that you can do? We talked in the morning about imbibing the sunnah, but even before that, there's one or two steps that a person should be very cognizant of. The beginning of acquaintance, the beginning of developing this relationship, right, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inaba. Right? Inaba. Anaba means to literally turn, right? Or taba means to turn. And when a person makes tawbah, they're literally turning from one direction, meaning you're going a certain direction in your life, and everyone knows what that direction is. If you look in your life, Just look at what your dreams are, and that will tell you what your direction is in life. Look at what you think about in your salah, that will give you an idea what your direction is in life. Look at what you're worried about all the time, that will give you an idea of what your direction in life. And if that direction is other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawbah means you change that direction and turn it towards Allah. That process, right, is the foundation of that process of turning from one direction to another, making that, when you talk about change, right, change is really basically a change in direction. Change is either, when you talk about vectors, right, in physics, vectors have have two things. They have magnitude and they have direction. So you change the magnitude, that's a change, or you change the direction, that's a change. So you have, your life is a vector. It has a certain magnitude that you're chasing after a certain thing with a certain amount of velocity, right? And so if you're going in a certain direction, when you change direction, understand this, when you change a direction in your life, no one can change immediately. What it requires is that if you're going in this direction at 50 miles per hour, first of all, you have to go to zero, from 50 miles to 0 in that direction, and only then can you go in the opposite direction. Right? Only then can you go, if you're going east, you can't go back in west. If you're going east at 50 miles per hour, you can't change direction and go west at 50 miles per hour immediately until you hit 0, right? By definition. So that's one change, bringing yourself back to 0, completely leaving that life, and then changing completely and putting on the vector of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and that's tawbah. If you do that, Allahu yashtabi man yasha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks certain people. There are certain slaves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just picks. Right? They're the special slaves of Allah. There are people who see Rasulullah nightly in their dreams. There are certain people who, you just look at their life and you say, subhanAllah, those are the chosen of Allah. But وَيَهْدِي إِلَيْهِ مَن يُنِيبُ. If you turn to Allah, Allah will pick you up. There is no doubt in my mind, right? I'm so firm with, whatever experience Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given in my life, there's not a single person that I have seen that they try to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they try to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't guide them. And these are the things that stories are made of. Right? A person is like, those things happen to you in your life. This person was saying like, I was just, thinking about such and such, and I had made such and such a decision, and all of a sudden some person shows up, like some righteous individual shows up in their life out of nowhere. He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, what are you doing here? It's just sometimes fantastical how these things happen. But that's the stuff, like I said, literally stories are made of. If you make this inaba, you make this tawbah, you make this decision, I want to make a serious change in my life, definitely, 100%, with yaqeen, I tell you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make some type of asbab. You yourself will be shocked. Right? You yourself will be shocked. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us amongst those people of inaba. He makes us amongst those people of tawbah. He makes us amongst those people who develop a deep and abiding relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That He makes us from amongst those people that the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mahabbah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the nisbah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes more important to them than anything else. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns our face from everything that is ghayrullah and make us completely mutawajjih to Him and Him alone. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillah.